Welcome to the Cockney Guide to Enlightenment podcast. My name's Stephen Rosen, and in this podcast we go beneath the surface of people's lives to find out what makes them tick. My own life I wrote about in this book, Lost in the Babylon. It's through childhood adversity, organised crime and a successful life as a businessman in the city. When I talk to people, we go beneath the surface of where they got to in their lives and we find out what really makes them tick. So if you want to follow me, connect to me with social media at Cockney Prophet. And if you enjoy this podcast, please like it, subscribe or follow us and enjoy the episode. Okay, here we are. Welcome to the Cockney Guide to Enlightenment podcast with myself, Stephen Rosen, and my guest today, Stanley J. Browne. Stanley, how you doing, brother?
Mate, absolutely fantastic. Honour and a privilege to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
No, it's since a while ago. You know, I knew that we had so much in common, and we've recently read each other's books, and that was just like,
mind blowing. Because interesting for me, as I said, when I started reading your book, the similarities were just out of this world, man.
Yeah.
Hugely. And the thing is, you don't really get to know a person on a deeper level until you've read their memoir. Because even though I'd seen you about, we've had conversations in the past, but we didn't quite go there.
Yeah.
And when I read your book, I was like, oh my goodness. It was like almost reading my own story, but from a different perspective.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I had a very similar experience reading yours. And there's a bit of background noise going on because some guys are working over the back there, but that's cool, you know.
Yeah, man, everyone's got to eat. Let them do their drilling and their banging or whatever they got to do, man. We're
absolutely,
going to get stuck into this.
And this is the Cockney Guide to Enlightenment, so it's life on life's terms here, you know.
Absolutely.
But getting back to reading your book, I mean, I just, it was so vivid for me, you know, just when you, and we'll obviously talk a little bit about your journey, but just so vivid reading about you as a child, and you described the scene in your mum's lounge, and she was having a little blues party or something, and it was, and you was moving about and doing some skanking and that.
Yeah, skanking up.
And it it was like I was standing in a room there watching you, you know. Knowing those kind of ways, you know.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you know, a lot of people who have read the memoir have also said the same thing. They always mention that opening scene of the blues party.
Yeah.
You know, the smoke-filled room, the heavy beeline, the bass. Do you know what I mean? Kicking in. And there I am skanking in the middle of the room, surrounded by adults who are egging me on. And back then they used to say, go there, meaning go there, but Jamaican back, well, go there, man, go there, boy, you know what I mean, move, you know. Yeah. And I was just in my element, do you know what I mean? You know, I'm like, 6, 7 years old or whatever it is, do you know what I mean? And what I talk about in that particular scene is surrounded by my tribe. I was at home with my tribe. I was with my tribe. I felt grounded. I felt comfortable. I felt like I belonged, you know, because my memoir is very much about, you know, we're going to get down to the nuts and bolts of who I am and my journey. But my memoir is very much about, it's about family. It's about love. It's about belonging. And it's about finding my way back home, having got lost along the journey. And, you know, my journey is, do you know what I mean? I was just speaking to someone just on, ironically, when I arrived here in Leigh-on-Sea, lovely place, by the way, Leigh-on-Sea, very chilled, very laid back, very bohemian, almost like Brighton. I got a message from a friend who had basically put me up in Australia when I was backpacking, who I hadn't been in touch for over 20 odd years. Wow. And she says, are you the same Stanley that I put up in my flat 20 years ago when you was backpacking? And I said, oh my God, yes. And we end up having a conversation as I'm walking around in Lindsay. She said, what have you been up to? What's been going on? I see you've got a book. You're an actor.
Yeah.
You're a singer-songwriter. Oh my God, where's all this come from? And what's the book about? So I was explaining to her about the journey of, coming from, a young boy who grew up with a schizophrenic mum and ended up in children's homes, foster parents, being fostered and, moved around, detention centers, borstals, young offenders, prisons, all this, addiction, basically.
Yeah.
And she was blown away by like, what? Because, when I met her 20 odd years ago in Australia, 24 years to be precise, she knew nothing, she was very kind to put me up, but she knew nothing about my past. So of course, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Now I'm opening the doors and letting her in, and,
And I kind of resonate with that. With with the journey of going home, which I really want to get into with you, but with that maintaining a certain level of anonymity in life, because I came through my whole journey, which was very, very similar, the addiction, the prisons, the crime, all of that kind of stuff, and then kind of turned that around, became successful. But it wasn't until I was like many, many years into my recovery, and I'd established a nice life, business. People who had known me for 25 years plus didn't have a clue where I came from, and so when I released that book, it wasn't until the point, maybe a few years before that I started really getting onto that journey of coming home, and then realizing that this is just so valuable. This journey is so valuable, and it's a point that now, although I've maintained an anonymity and I've built this different life, now it's time that it feels like the right time to be addressing this stuff and talking about it.
Absolutely. And what I would say on the back of that is, like yourself, and I echo everything you've just shared, I kept my anonymity for a very long time. I work as an actor in the industry, and I didn't feel safe to reveal my past, because my own fears and anxiety. I thought, if I let them in, if I let people in, I'm not gonna get an acting job. Do you know what I mean? They're gonna boot me off the film set. You know what I mean? What? You was a drug addict. What? You done time. What? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
sure.
I lived. I wouldn't say I lived in fear, but I was anxious. I had an anxiety around it. And also, the thing is, when you come from where we come from, and you've done what we've done, especially, I'm gonna talk about this prison. When you have a criminal record, it's something where, and I'm going to touch on this. I've been in recovery now. Next June is going to be 30 years that I've been in recovery, that I've been abstinent from, mind, mood, altering chemicals that's going to change the way I feel about myself. But I've also been abstinent from crime.
Yeah.
I've also been abstinent from, do you know what I mean? Getting involved in all that stuff I used to as a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
What I tried to do was, I thought, okay, it's been so long, I'm sure I can get my criminal record, wiped clean, because that's no longer who I am. I was only a kid then. I was a teenager, a young, angry young man. But now I've become a productive member of society, which I have been for the longest time, paying my bills, got a property business, blah, 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 blah. So I got a friend of mine who's a barrister, and he looked into it for me. And you guess what? They would not wipe the record.
Expunge it, no.
They won't expunge it.
No.
And they wrote back to him saying, hey, because we tried to go through different, avenues and, do it one by one with each, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With each
offence.
Each offence.
Yeah.
Anyway, the long story short, they came back and said, look, they changed the law on this now. And the only time it can be completely wiped is on your 98th birthday.
Right, okay.
Can you believe this?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Anyone listening to this, watching this, trust me, your 98th
If you're in your 80s, you've still got a way to go. Yeah.
birthday. First, I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
I thought, because my mate, sometimes he has a laugh, and he's like, no, I'm dead. This is what's come back. And, you know, I felt a bit of anger at first. Do you know what I mean? I felt a bit of anger. But then I thought, actually, you know what? Let it be. I'm going to be all right with or without that anyway.
Yeah.
I'll be all right. You know, the universe will find a way for me. So when I wrote Little Big Man, that was my way of just kind of acknowledging and embracing, actually, you know what? This is who I am. And all of that has made me my metal. This has made me the man I am today. All of that. I would not be who I am had I not gone through all of that stuff, had I not done the things I done. So,
and that's just so important, isn't it? For it's such an important message.
Yeah.
To just send out there to everybody that, you know, we all go through life and we all make our choices, and
Absolutely.
whether they're conscious choices, unconscious, they're based on our, you know, our childhood, they're based on our experiences of life, but
absolutely, yeah.
they don't necessarily have to define us.
100%.
Because we can all evolve and we can all change.
Yeah.
And this is what's so important to...
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lovely saying, I'm not responsible for what happens to me as a child, but I am responsible for what happens to me as an adult. And as an adult, I've chosen to live a clean, healthy life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I've
for
chosen to abstain, and, you know what I mean, from the days of drugs and alcohol and crime and
it's a point that I just want to just kind of zero in, because, you know, as you were saying that, and it's you've said all the things that you've stopped doing, which is important. You know, that's kind of like ground zero, isn't it? If you want to change, you don't want to go to jail, then you don't commit crime, or
simple.
You know, exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be a drug addict, you learn how to stop taking drugs. But then that's just the beginning, isn't it? And,
oh my goodness!
And then the change is the real journey of finding, you know, your metal as you described it. But
absolutely, and, you know, and the thing is, what I will say is, you know, my experience of being on this journey, and the journey I talk about is the journey of life on life's terms. Yeah, you know, we all have our baggage. We all come from wherever we come from, but at some stage in our life, we all have to make a choice. What do you want to do about it? What do you want to do about it? What do you want to be? Do you know what I mean? It's like when they say to a youngster, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know? And I remember I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. Do you know what I mean? Because I was so, my home life was so upside down, inside out, and topsy-turvy. I couldn't answer that question. I couldn't even think what I was going to do for next week. You know?
You're just in survival mode.
Because you're in survival mode, exactly. Yeah. And then you come out of survival mode and you start to live. You start to actually, and I was just talking the other day, because I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous, and I do talks and do shares. I was just doing a share the other day, and I was talking about this. I was talking about that journey of looking within, that journey of change, that journey of growing up, and that journey of like, okay, who am I? Do you know what I mean? Who am I now?
Yeah.
What are my likes? What are my dislikes? All of this stuff. And if you've grown up without parents and you don't have a blueprint of how to be a parent, I had to learn how to parent myself. I had to learn how to parent little Stanley.
Yeah.
Hence why the title of my book is called Little Big Man.
Yeah.
Because there's this little young man inside who is just a child, but didn't have the nurturing that I give to my 11-year-old son today.
Mm.
And I had to learn how to be a parent to myself and look after my needs and not my wants. And it's funny because my son, he lives with me. I'm a full-time dad. I don't like to say I'm a single dad because I don't want to sound like a victim, but I'm a full-time dad, and I love being a full-time dad. I love doing the school runs and picking him up from tennis and dropping him off, and the parties. I love that. I love nurturing my son. And one time he's got into a bit of an altercation at school, nothing major. And the teachers, I've gone to pick him up from school, and the teacher's gone, hey, just want to say, come, Malachi. And he's like, yeah, tell your dad what happened. And he's like, yeah, I did this, I did that. I can't remember what it was, something silly. So I said, okay. I said, thanks for notifying me. And what'd you say, son? He said, sorry. I said, okay. So we went home. The following morning, I'm making his breakfast. He's there sitting down, just about to eat it. And I said, listen, so when you go into school today, I want you to go back to that teacher, and I want you to tell that teacher, I'm sorry for my behavior, and I take full responsibility, and I'm going to try better. And he looked at me, and he made this face. He's like, Dad, you want me to say all of that? I'm like, yes, son. He said, why? And I said, because if I had a dad, that's what I would want to hear my dad tell me. And my son just looked at me and went, oh, come here, Dad. And he gave me the biggest hug.
Well, man.
Powerful, goosebump.
Powerful
moment.
Stuff, yeah.
Because he recognized what I just said.
Yeah.
He knows I didn't grow up with a father. And he knows that I'm giving him everything I didn't have, which was a father.
And this is like, when I spoke to you a few days ago, I don't want to jump straight into it, but this is rites of passage stuff. This is like maturity, growing into your masculine maturity and passing that stuff on to the next generation, to your children. And it's so valuable because, your dad wasn't around. My dad was around sometime, and I can remember a conversation. I'd come out of jail at 21, and the conversation with my dad is, what are you going to do now, son? I said, I don't know, He said, I know some people are putting one together, it's a serious one. and that was the conversation, so a reflection on a conversation I had with my eldest at 21. He was talking about something, and I was trying to talk about his feelings and talk about this other kind of stuff, which is is so far removed from what we was given or what we wasn't given. More to the point, really.
Yeah.
So
my dad, man, bless him, and that's another thing, forgiveness.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been a huge part of my journey. I'm learning to forgive because my dad did the best he could with the tools he had, and yet at the same time, I can also acknowledge that for him, there was this burden that he didn't want because he wasn't with my mum. They weren't together. My mum fell pregnant. They was together a few months or whatever. Boom. Yeah. Next thing you know, she's with someone else, or they moved on. They weren't together long. So I felt from my dad there was this burden, like, I've got this kid. I didn't really ask for it. Okay, I'll try and see him on a Sunday once in a while. And I would see him. I can count on one hand how many years I've seen him before he passed away. Blessed, 5 years, 6 years ago, whatever. And I remember in my book I talk about, I remember I got an 18-month sentence at Warren Hill, young offenders, and I wrote to my dad, to say, hey, Dad, look, I've kind of messed up, but when I get out, because it's that wanting to appease, isn't it? It's that wanting to be accepted, wanting to be loved, and wanting him to love me. And I was always chasing him, if that makes sense, for his love and his affection. And he was always running away from me. So here I am now, banged up. He knew I was going to go there because it wasn't the first time, And so when I wrote to him and I was like, hey, I'm going to do better when I get out, la, la, la. Hey, look, I'm doing English, I'm doing maths, I'm on a computer study, I'm doing arts, I'm trying to, G him up, to let him know I'm doing positive things, even though I'm banged up. And again, I put this in the book. He wrote me back and he says, don't you ever get in touch with me again.
Yeah, I remember reading that, man. Yeah.
Don't you ever write me again. And I could not believe the response, you know what I mean? You're not my son, and look, just leave me. And I was just in bits. I was angry, man.
Yeah, I think you wrote about smashing the gaff up.
I smashed the cell up and everything. I just really went for it. And, you know, when you talk about this rites of passage and what we pass on as men, I had to forgive my dad because I realized he only did what was right for him with the tools he had, you know. Yeah. And I had to also understand his journey and not just look on it from my side of things.
And I think for me, I mean, I just echo everything that you've just said there about the forgiveness, and I went down that whole journey myself, and I think when you kind of start reconciling your own life, for me it works this way, you know, and I started allowing myself some forgiveness for my stuff, then I could apply it outwards. 100%. You know, and I think forgiveness for me is just a two-way street. It kind of flows in both directions, and whether you can forgive someone first and then apply that same formula to yourself for your own stuff. Yeah. But it's just such an important part of freeing yourself up and moving on, which is just so valuable, isn't it?
Absolutely, because that allows me now to be a parent to my own son, to actually show up for him full-time, 100%, and give him the tools that he will now need and can take on his journey, you know. And we talk about, he's 11 and he's like, yeah, Dad, well, when I have my kids, you know, he's already making plans, la, 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 la. And sometimes he goes, Dad, I say, yes, son, are you going to be around when I have my kids? I said, yeah, man, you can't get rid of me so quick. I'm going to be here, man. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting to here is, again, you know, when you talk about rites of passage, I've already seen my fruits of labor in him, in the sense that he likes the blueprint I'm giving him, so much so that he's already making plans with that blueprint to what to do with his kids when he has them. Because, you know, firstly, you know, I give my son so much love, and I tell him I love him. He tells me he loves me. I never got none of that. I never heard them words ever from my dad, ever, right? There they are. They're off again, the builders next door. So all good people. Just don't worry about that. Let them. They need to work. They got to put food on the table. So I never got none of that from my father. And even when I chastise my son, I feel really bad because I'm old school. I'm not into none of this modern day parenting where we have too much of a long frigging, you know what I mean, debate about something very simple. Sometimes that is like, Dad, can I do such and can I do that? No, son. Why not? Because I said so. Simple. Yeah. We ain't got no long hours. We don't have to have this, you know what I mean? You know, like big, long, you know, group therapy about it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes kids just need to hear from a
that coupled with the love and the nurturing,
absolutely,
and that other stuff that you've explained to him, kind of works, doesn't it? It's not 100%. Like old school, just like boom, it's my way or no way.
Absolutely, there has to be for me a balance.
Yeah, for sure.
It has to be a bit of a balance because for me, they're still children, and I think to myself, how would what would I have liked from a father? And what I would like from a father is that unconditional love to if we do have, a thing where I've got to like, hey son, let me tell you exactly why this is happening or that happening. We do have a conversation and we do talk. Or if I've had to chastise him, I say, hey son, this is why. And he fully understands.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt, I was just saying, I thought of, because do you think a lot of this is generational, that our father's generation, not as the individuals, I'm talking about as a whole generation, didn't have that ability to do that kind of stuff?
If you think about it today, we're living in an age where people are now opening up and talking about their lives and who they are. We're living in an era where it's okay to talk your truth.
Yeah, for sure.
Back in the days, we grew up in an era where you keep your mouth shut. You have the stiff upper lip or whatever it is. You don't tell people your business.
Yeah.
You know, especially Jamaica. You don't tell nobody your business, you know. Be quiet, not talk, you know, man, not talk my business.
And,
you know?
and in Hackney and in East London,
Absolutely.
it's like, you know, that's like an unwritten law, isn't it?
Absolutely. But
yeah.
again, you're right. It was an era that they grew up in.
Yeah.
You know, it was very much behind closed doors. You kept the family secrets. Now, if you think about it, you've got all these TV, reality TV shows. You know, you've got newsreaders who are crying. You know, you've got people showing emotions. Thank God, yes. We need more of that because we need to tap into the source.
There's a little caveat here for me is that if it's authentic. Because
of course,
some of it, you know, some of this reality TV stuff is just
But when
if the cameras weren't there, would these people be behaving like this?
True, but then at the same time, you know, I think if there was a platform where people can be themselves, and I get you. For me, it's not who am I to judge or make,
I'm just
I'm not
observation,
there, but
just
I
an
get
observation, you know.
But I think what is good is if one is allowed to express themselves and express their emotions, and that's captured on film, TV, whatever, you know, in documentaries and whatnot, or you get newsreaders who actually get emotional. I think brilliant. So you should do. So you should be allowed. Because back in the days, they would have lost their job.
Yeah.
You know, that's not professional. You can't be blah, blah, blah. Now, they get awards for that. You're given an award because you've shown emotions. And what I think is happening in today is we're all thirsty for this. We are thirsty. We're all dehydrated. We're dehydrated with the Hollywood stuff, the happy endings, the boy meets girl and live happily ever after. We're dehydrated. We want to quench our thirst with the real stuff. What's really going on? Like I heard one time, there was a lovely singer-songwriter. She was talking about we're all walking around holding our bellies in.
Yeah.
Because we all want to look like we're trim and slim.
Yeah.
But as soon as we let go, we're like, oh, you got one too? Yeah, I've got one too. Yeah, it's okay. Look, I've got a belly. You got a belly. It's okay. We can be comfortable with that.
I mean, it's a really interesting point, and I think there's a shift. You know, I mean, you and I have been working at this stuff for years and years, and it seems like other people, which is amazing, are coming into a new opening of, maybe it's just a different generation, a different era, but are coming into a much more open way of learning how to be themselves, express themselves. You know, I think that's so valuable, but I just kind of wondering, really, you know, what do you think is caused that shift? I mean, without that rite of passage, I mean, you know, most of our parents' generation didn't pass on to us. So, you know, a lot of our generation, I mean, I see people that I'm connected to on maybe social media, and you know, I look at their lives, and they don't seem to be doing much different. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
They might have got nice houses and got jobs and stuff like that, but you know, when you look at the content of what they're putting out, or they're sort of promoting themselves, there's not a massive change. So what is the shift in, like, you know, the generation? Where did that shift come from? Where does all this new energy come from? Do you think it's just...
You know what? I think, you know, there's a lot of things that has happened since we were born. Okay, there's been some humongous things, like, for example, the COVID thing that happened recently. You know, you look on what's happening with the earth and the environment. Do you know what I mean? there's been some big changes, some big things that have happened that have kind of, I think, woken up the human race worldwide. And this whole thing with technology, you know, of course, you know, social media and all of that stuff. You think about, remember the Arab Spring and whatnot that came through social media. So I think because of technology, it's allowed us all to connect with each other. And the best analogy I can come up with is, it's a bit like, here's the best analogy. The Emperor's New Clothes. Okay? You know that book?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, it's about the emperor who is, you know, the lord of the land, and he hires these tailors to make him a very expensive suit. So these con men come along and goes, hey, if you want this expensive suit, we're going to have to use expensive thread. But only wise people can see this thread. Stupid people can't. So of course the thread's invisible. So they get about making him this suit made of invisible thread that only wise people can see this thread, yeah? Anyway, they take a few days or weeks, and then they finally goes, sir, your suit's ready. And what do you think? Can you feel this lovely cloth? And look how that it really sits around your knees, the length of the coat and blah, blah, blah. And of course, he's like, yes, I see it. Oh my God, yes, amazing, lovely. And all his servants, what do you think? And everyone's like, yes, sir, yes. You know, and of course, you know, he's naked.
Yeah.
So now he goes onto the streets so that everyone can see his lovely new suit and fine threads that he has. And the words got out that if you can't see it, then you're stupid. And if you can, you're wise. Then there's this little kid in the crowd who, and just as the emperor bowls down, you know, the road in front of him, the little boy points and goes, look, the emperor's got no clothes on. And then the spell is broken. Everybody laughs their head off because he's naked. So I feel like with that analogy, I believe with technology has brought us all together. We're all thinking the same things, just that we haven't had an opportunity to converse.
Right.
We're all standing in that crowd. We're all seeing what's happening, you know, to planet Earth with global warming. Do you know what I mean? We're all seeing what's going on with the wars and all of this stuff and, you know, politics and, you know, we've been hoodwinked.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're all thinking and feeling exactly the same thing, just that we've never had the opportunity to converse. And I think what's happened with technology and social media is we're all conversing now. We're all talking about stuff. We're communicating. Therefore, the change happens. And, you know, it's like this, a consciousness comes around, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when I say consciousness, it doesn't mean you have to wear a halo on your head and you've got to meditate 100 times a day. No, for me, a spiritual consciousness is just being aware of your surroundings and aware what's going on outside of your comfort zone, outside of where you live, you know, and caring about what's going on, you know, in another country.
Yeah.
You know, and so many of us are like, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
That's my take on it. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but this is my philosophy on why, in answer to your question, why we're all waking up at the same time.
And I've come to the very, very same conclusion in kind of in a different way, but as a solution for us to evolve as our species, as we need to survive. Otherwise, you know, we're on a destructive path. And
absolutely. And I think over the years, there's been so much division and not enough unification that we've all been living in our own bubbles, our separate bubbles. Do you know what I mean?
And just winding right back to our childhoods and the gangs and stuff like that, and where we used to go to find our tribe, where we used to go to find our belonging, and that it's you know, that is just playing out in all different scenarios at all different levels of society, and we need to change all of that. I'm sounding like, you know, I'm some sort of guru now, but I'm not. I'm just saying I recognise that spirituality, however people perceive that, and I like the way you just described it. It's just becoming aware of our bigger environment, and I think, you know, I got this theory that, you know, there's we kind of traditionally we've been in small kind of groups and we'll take care of ourselves in a family group or something like that. Lots don't, I know, lots don't. But then, you know, you might kind of spread that out into, like, you know, your friends in the neighbourhood or your gang, but then you're fighting the next gang in the next neighbourhood, or you're competing against the next one. And then sometimes, you know, when there's a war and then the whole country is like, yeah, okay, we're this country and we're fighting that country, and there's always someone else that is outside of that circle.
Of course. You know, which, you know, as you were speaking, it just reminded me of something. And I remember many years ago, I started to write a little book, and it was called "We're All Doing Time," which was the title of the book.
Yeah.
And I was just experimenting. What I meant by that title is, if you think about what you just said, we all are doing time. And when I relate that to, like, being banged up, doing prison time and whatnot, you know, you got your key for your door, you know, you go off to work, as do, you know, when you're doing bird, you know, you might go and work on servery, might go and work in the gardens, or you might go and work and wherever you're going to work, and you go off, do your work, and you come back, you get banged up again. And it's like, just as you said, we have these boxes that we live in that we call houses, and we have a key to the lock, and we open that door and we lock ourselves away, and we protect our own family, because we think, right, this is the most important thing, is that self-preservation, right? Yeah. You know, especially when you live in London or a city, it doesn't have to be London, New York, wherever, where so much stuff's happening. You live in anxiety, you live in fear of your loved ones. So you make sure. I
think fear is
big time.
Is the main basis of all of it.
So you lock yourself away. And then we had lockdown, where it was big, you know. Now we're really locking ourselves away because, you know, you can't get out. All of a sudden, we're aware of our neighbours. It's not about us anymore. All of a sudden, that old person who lived a few doors down, you're saying, hey, can I get you anything from the shop? All of a sudden, we're showing each other love. And do you know what I mean? We're like, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Hey, can I get you, you know?
On a grassroots level, and this is so valuable. I'm just going to, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make one point that on a grassroots level, that was happening, and I saw it happening. I saw people out walking down the seafront, talking to each other. Yeah. On a different level, on a media level, on a government level, you know, there was still that separation was going along. It was like, you know, look what's happening. This country's caused it. This is caused it. But, do you understand?
But that's always going to be the case when it comes to politics, or as the Rastaman say, polytricks, because they're not politicians, they're polymagicians. Yeah. So what, you know. For me, I don't really get too involved. No,
I'm not getting involved. But the point I want to make is, like, this movement is grassroots. You know, it's not coming from people who want agendas to control us.
100%.
It needs to be from me to you and you to your neighbour.
Because fundamentally, underneath it all, we are human beings. Yeah. We're human beings. And what's a human being? We're gullible, fallible, we make mistakes, yet we cannot be alone. Yeah. We can't just stay on top of a mountain by ourselves. No, man, we need to converse. We need to connect with other human beings. And when that happened, with lockdown, that's when you saw we got in touch with our deep human nature. Do you know what I mean? To show compassion, to show love, empathy, kindness. How much money was raised for different charities, doing this, doing that. You know, we reached out to each other on such a level. It was beautiful, really beautiful. And another thing, you look at Mother Nature, you know, fishes came back, birds came back, species started to, you know.
Yeah, very quickly.
And I tell you what, mate, I said to myself, imagine if, you know, because they looked at the blueprint of, you know, all the aeroplanes and that had stopped flying and the impact it had on the planet. And, you know, along with just, you know, exhaust fumes and cars and et cetera. And they saw that so much of nature came back when we just left it alone.
Yeah.
So imagine if we all agree as human beings on planet Earth to go, you know what? Why don't we have a lockdown every 4 years for 3 days voluntarily to let the planet breathe? Do you know what I mean? And my analogy of this whole lockdown thing, I don't care where it came from, it happened. We've had tons of stuff that's happened in the past with certain diseases and whatnot. It's just part of life and being human. Things like this happen. But, you know, my analogy is that, you know, when you have these kind of major diseases and major outbreaks, I feel like Mother Earth is saying, guys, come on, man, I can't breathe. I need a break. You know, it's too much. You know, it's too much. I can't breathe. I need a break. People are like, hey, how can we reduce our carbon footprint? And Mother Nature says, I've got an idea. Tell you what we're going to do. Have some of that.
Yeah.
We're going to just stop for a second.
Stop.
Stop. Do you know what I mean?
Really interesting thing that I think is what I've taken out of what you've just said is the shift from the normal locking ourselves in a little box to finding a deeper level of connection with ourselves and our humanity. And I think the level of connection is the absolute most important part of that, because I think, you know, when we're not so distracted by our busy lives, you know, all of that stuff, when we, and it's a unique time in the planet where near enough everyone stopped at the same time, you know, that level of connection naturally started to come back to people. And we call it spirituality, we call it whatever it is, you know, connecting to that deep intuitive voice within yourself that all of a sudden has got a different agenda. It's not about the egoic agenda of get more and do this and be faster and quicker and higher and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. It's like it's switched, you know, to a different voice, which each and every person has got inside them. And my journey is been, and I'm sure your journey to an extent as well, has been partially not just changing our external lives on the outside to provide and to nurture and become, but also to connect to that internal voice inside, that internal journey, which is so rich and gives us so much. And I think, you know, going back to the rites of passage and stuff like that, you know, when we lived in tribes, when we lived as hunter-gatherers, you know, there would have been much more connection, you know. The society would have functioned as a whole. You know, it wouldn't have been about individuals. Surely you had leaders and stuff like that, but, you know, the way these things, indigenous people lived would be about the whole. And I think that's, as we've evolved, especially in the Western world, you know, we've moved so far away from that. We've lost so much. And that's why you as a kid and me as a kid and the kids today that are still out there in the gangs, you know, even like just killing each other over nothing, you know, over just trying to be a man even. And the people that they're trying to be a man to impress are not men themselves. You know, they might have big bodies and they got money and they're driving nice cars, but, you know, they're children.
Yeah.
They're not mature.
The thing is, you know, look, that So for me, you know, like you touched on the gangs and whatnot. For me, it's like this. That all happened long time before it happened, because underneath that, there's more. It's a bigger wound. Do you know what I mean? It's a much bigger wound. We're talking about, as we said, single parents. We're talking about, you know, fatherless. Do you know what I mean? Kids. We're talking about poverty. You know what I mean? You know, we're talking about. There's a whole amalgamation of stuff that's happened to lead towards this, what they call now with the gang violence and whatnot. And I think for me, coming from that, growing up in that, I can see it's more to it than just meets the eye.
Of course, yeah.
And I think, you know, it needs, you know, it's a funny old one, because you think to yourself, okay, so where do we go from here? How do we address this? How do we find that balance? Do you know what I mean? Where did we go wrong? How did this end up being this way? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where did they become so desensitized to human life?
Yeah.
Then we got to look at, okay, let's look on the home life. Like once upon a time, I worked in a primary school as a family support worker. And what my job was to work with what they call behavioral kids. You know, so in my books, I don't see as really behavioral kids. I see it as kids just needing good, orderly direction. How are we doing for time?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And what I said to the head teacher at the time, and I remember, you know, sorry if I go off on one a bit, before I got the job, I had to do the whole criminal record check and la. And I was honest and upfront. I said, I'm just going to let you know, I was a bit of a naughty kid, you know, back in the days, but I'm just putting that out there on this job interview. And so when you do that criminal thingy check, the CRB, something's going to come back. And sure enough, it all came back. They brought me back in, and there's like, wow, Mr. Browne, we didn't expect all of this. And it was a long ass list, yeah? However, we want to give you the job because we believe the kids will listen to you.
Yeah.
And they were right, because what I did with them kids, I said, I want to work with them on an individual level, on an individual basis. And what I did with the parents was, I was like, look, if you're willing to trust me, we can give your sons good, orderly direction. So it was just about, okay, one of these kids I said he was punching, you know, and fighting all the time, 8 years old. The teachers were afraid of him. So I said, okay, son, come. He came into my office. I said, here's a pen, here's a paper. I want you to write on this list everything you want to do in life. Anything. And he's like, anything, Mr. Browne? I said, yeah, anything. And he's like, I want a box. I said, put that on the top of the list, son. So he put boxing, he put skating, he put ice hockey, he put all kinds of stuff. So I took him to Repton Boys Club. But before I did that, I had to have a word with the teachers. We have to have a meeting. And all the teachers are like, oh, my God, no, you can't send him boxing. He's already beating everyone up, and we're already afraid of him. Yeah. I said, guys, just trust me. He may be punching, but he's never been punched. He's never been punched. He's always been doing the punching. So just trust me. And I said to his mum, I'm happy to pick him up myself. So I did. On a Saturday morning, I would pick him up, take him boxing, and drop him back. No extra pay. I did that from my heart because I wanted to help this kid. 3 months in, and I always said to him, son, when you've had enough, you just let Mr. Browne know. And I would pick him up, be like, man, Mr. Browne, I can't get nowhere near this kid. He kept punching. We're in the ring. And every time I go to punching, he moves. You know, that's boxing, son, you know.
Yeah.
But what happened was his mum trusted me. She changed his diet, stopped bringing him up Mars bars and chocolates and all this stuff at the gate. She took his TV out the room because I made that suggestion, because when kids are watching all this TV and stuff, of course you're not going to sleep. Another thing was he was on this thing called Ritalin, right? For ADHD. He's 8 years old. He's been on it since he was five. And I said, so we spoke about that. She trusted me. She said, I want to try a holistic approach, with a big meeting. Doctors weren't up for it, but she trusted Mr. Browne. And she said, I want to try Mr. Browne's way. If it doesn't work, we can go back to the Ritalin. And all she did was change the boy's diet, gave him healthy food, took the TV out of his room, and cut down on all that computer, Nintendo stuff, And he did boxing. Within months, his attitude changed. He's gone from not being in the class to being in the classrooms now. He's gone from not doing work to doing work. He's gone from not sleeping to sleeping and not having an appetite to having an appetite. Because one of the effects of Ritalin is you lose your appetite. Yeah, and we all know is if you're hungry, because if I'm hungry, I'm grumpy as hell, man.
Yeah.
Don't mess around, don't be around me if I'm hungry. And imagine a little kid who's not in touch with his feelings. And just long story short, what happened for this kid and other kids I ended up working with, once they got a holistic approach, their attitude to life changed. And back on the gangs and whatnot, now I only worked with like maybe, 5 or 6 kids in that primary school. Imagine if you multiply that by thousands.
Yeah.
If we had people who could work with kids one-to-one on that level, we would address the problem. Because when you come to, like you mentioned, the gangs and the killings and whatnot, it all goes back to what's going on for them at home life. Who's parenting, where they getting the nurturing from, are they being nurtured, And if parents are struggling, whether they're mums or dads, they're not getting the right tools or the right support to help them. And a lot of the times it's kids raising kids.
For sure.
Which is another thing,
And I think, once again, it's kind of like it needs to start at a small level, doesn't it, to integrate and the trust and that. And I think it's a powerful example of just, I've spoke to many people on this podcast about healing, about kind of medicine, about all sorts of different stuff, self-healing. And most of the solutions that I'm hearing are not mainstream, are not like Western medicine solutions. You mentioned like, a particular drug, Ritalin, but and an alternative to that and the results to that. So I'm not saying that we have to scrap our whole system, because, that's not going to happen, is it? But the whole system needs to start bringing in some of that, that holistic and some of that old connection that we've lost into the system. And just jumping, just before you go on, just jumping back from the gangs, I'm writing a second book, and in the book, I'm comparing like the kids on the street corner to the people in the boardrooms running this country. And on the surface level, they're completely different, obviously. But when you take down like what they're doing for a job, and you take down, maybe one more level and start looking at what's motivating these people, it's the same thing. It's because we're human, we want to fit, we want to connect. And probably on that level, on that level, they're doing as much damage, a lot more damage than the kids on the street corners. Yeah. In the way that they're treating people, in the way that they're destroying our environments and all of this kind of stuff for a profit, So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And I'm not going to say that, we can solve that or we can solve that, but the approach, what I'm trying to say is, when we start looking in at what's valuable, when we start recognizing that what happens when we stop chasing all of this stuff and start tuning into our humanity, then natural solutions grow out of this. And natural, I think, is a really important point of it.
Yeah. And and I hear you on that. I mean, for me, I feel like there's no us and them. And
bang.
For my taste, I'm gonna explain myself as well. I come from the ghetto, man. I come from the ghetto. Do you know what I mean? I come from a very rough place. I grew up with nothing, absolutely nothing. Do you know what I mean? I come from a place where, as I mentioned, I had a schizophrenic mum, bless her, no fault of her own. She went through her own stuff. She went through her own journey, coming from Jamaica, arriving in the UK at 13, whatever, 12, 13, only to discover she's with her biological mum, who she thought, when she was raised in Jamaica, she used to call her great-great-aunt mum, because she thought she was her mum, only to discover it wasn't her mum.
Yeah.
And then she comes to UK being sent for by her biological mum, and she's the eldest of 7 kids. And she used to be treated really bad, beaten, she had to wash, cook, clean, iron, all of that, proper, a Cinderella. So she had her own journey, which led to eventually molestation.
Yeah.
And sadly led to my mum having her breakdown. You know, I was 5 years old. So, you know, going through what we went through with my mum's schizophrenia, sadly, you know, myself and my siblings, we suffered. I mean, sometimes we didn't have no food in the house. You know, we're having, back in the days, we used to, you know, put bread, used to get sugar, put sugar on the bread, and you know what I mean, make these crunchy sugar bread sandwiches.
Sugar sandwiches, we used to have them.
There was times when we didn't have shampoo, so we used washing up liquid. Sometimes we didn't even have toilet paper, so we used newspaper. You know, we went through, you know, hard times. So my point being is, fast forward in the tape, the journey I've been on through growing up through all of that, then to go through the drugs and the prisons and the detention centers and then come off all of that, then to find myself and get into recovery and look at, you know, 12-step program and powerlessness and higher power and, you know what I mean, fearless moral inventory and writing my own stuff and healing from within, as you mentioned. What's left out of that for me as Stanley, having gone through all that at now 53 years of age, when I look on the world on the whole, and one of the things I did was I went backpacking around the world. You know, when I sorted my life out for 4 years, I went backpacking around the world, and my eyes was really open to just human nature and who we are. I realized there is no us and them. There's only us, and there's only we as the human beings, and what we choose. How we choose to live our lives. We have a choice. We don't have to be here if we don't really want to be here. And we don't have to live there if we don't really, you know, we can up and leave and whatever. But if we go back to now, you mentioned with the gangs and what, you know, for me, again, I don't see gangs. I don't even, that word gang, I don't see that. Yeah, it's a label, know what I see? I see young kids who are missing good orderly direction, and they're missing nurturing. I empathize, you know. I know they have a story. And I know their story is probably similar to mine. Do you know what I mean? And that's okay. And I know they're on their journey. And what I do know is there are some great people out there like ourselves who are actually doing something about it. You've got mentors that are going into schools, do you know what I mean, on their lunch break just to talk with, especially the young boys, because it's proven that they're saying that the boys are the ones, girls seem to do better up to an age of certain age. I can't remember the full statistics and the numbers, but, you know, a lot of the boys are suffering because they do well in the primary, but then they get on to secondary and that's it, boom.
The influences kick in.
Influences kick in and the tribal and whatnot.
Yeah.
But what I see is young human beings who are missing some nurturing, missing some good orderly direction, and that's it. And then if you think of this modern day that they're growing up in as well, compared to our time, we had conkers, we had marbles, you know what I mean? We had knockdown ginger and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now with these, especially these games, these killing games, if you think about it, if your kid is playing killing games, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, yeah, your kid's going to end up being a murderer, no. But if we're playing killing games, them games can sometimes desensitize a young child's mind who's just not developed enough to know, to understand this is not reality.
Yeah.
And then I give you an example of this. I used to go to kung fu movies. Remember late night kung fu movies? I don't know if you ever done that. Late night you go kung fu movies. The first thing you do when you leave that movie is you start imitating what you've seen. Yeah. We start kicking, flying, we're trying the different moves. Now, if I go back to these video games or whatever the thing the hell it is that they play, I've seen that they're stabbing, they're shooting, there's blood pouring out of them on games. So for me, it's no surprise if they're able to hurt each other in the ways that they do. That's escalated from maybe back in our days. Things were still happening, but it has escalated. And I think there's amalgamation of events and stuff like that that's maybe contributed to that. Again, I don't have the answer. I'm only just theorizing.
It's a good observation, and I think it's an observation that a lot of parents are really making. I know my daughter really limits her children, what time they're spending and what kind of level that they're getting access to on TVs or, you know. So that's really important. And I think, you know, it's just, you know, we was conditioned by our circumstances, and these kids are getting conditioned by all of this stuff as well. And you know, I don't know if there is any answer to do that, but just going back to that whole us and them thing, you know, I think, you know, I mean, you was just in flow, so I didn't kind of come in
totally.
there.
No, that's all good.
But you was, I think for me, and it's the centre of the book that I'm writing now, it's for me that us and them is like the point where the egoic side of us, our operating system, has just become out of balance. And that's how we now view everything, you know, and we've discussed this about, you know, in 2 or 3 different ways already in this conversation, but, you know, we're not connecting as human beings, and someone in a different country, they're so far removed, you know, they're kind of like, they're not in our immediate us, you know, and getting back to what I was trying to say earlier, our us, we can expand our us to like the neighbourhood, to the country, to whatever, and there's always a them. And I think that's the crux of it. Yeah. As a species, until we really learn to evolve into like, I think we've got the resources right here, right now, to solve all of our issues. Yeah. If they was equally distributed, if, you know, if we I know, and it's, I know,
and I get it. And, you know, I want to give you a big hug. I really want to give you a big hug.
This is like lofty ideals or something. But
no, that's good because
I think they're like, as far as I can see, the only way out of growing out of this, and it's going to be a generational thing. We're not going to do it in a generation, you know. I
totally hear you. And look, man, it's okay to dream, and it's okay to have them ideals. Sure. Yeah. You know, for my taste, I believe, like the Rasta man say, everything happened for a reason, and nothing happened before the time. And I believe that what is to be must be. Yeah. And sometimes you got to lose yourself to find yourself.
You always have to.
I believe as a human beings on planet Earth, we are finding ourselves. Yeah. We've had to lose ourselves with all kinds of stuff that's still happening today. We haven't learned. And that's okay. Yeah. That's okay too.
And that's because that's the bit that's really important. Yeah.
For me, on a higher power level, we are not in charge. The universe is. The universe, and it ain't no he, it's a she in my books. She knows exactly what she's doing. We think we're in charge, but we're not. Because when the universe says, right, oh, you know what? Okay, have some COVID. Hey, you know what? Hey, let's have some hurricanes. Let's have some this. Let's have some. When that earth moves, we have no choice but to move with it. And I think that all this stuff that's going on in the planet is not that it has to happen, but it's happening because it's just happening.
That's the way it is.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
If you look over the decades, the centuries, you know, we can go far back to Ice Age if we really want to go there.
Yeah.
And we look back what's happened over the planet, how we even got different countries.
Yeah.
How this earth was one before we had the Ice Age and everything split, and you got, you know,
Tectonic
Africa,
plates and
India.
movements.
Exactly. We can go way back.
Yeah.
You know, how far we could. Now we fast forward the tape. I believe everything's happening as it's supposed to happen. And I think
right time.
At the right time. And it's not like, oh, you human beings got to be taught a lesson. No, I think it's just a matter of the journey of us going through what we need to go through to get to where we need to get. And, you know, of course, there will always be suffering. There will always be suffering. Do you know what I mean? It's because it's just part of human nature. There will always be. It's funny because I was just, ironically, again, this morning I took my son to school and we touched on this. Do you know what I mean? And he kind of touched on something with the war with Israel and la, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, you know, why such and such? I said, you know what, son? I'm going to tell you something. It doesn't matter whether you're Jewish, Palestine, Indian, Jamaican, African, you're from Nepalese. Human beings are human beings. And we'll always find a reason to disagree with each other.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether it's your cake is bigger than my cake, or I was here before you, or whatever. Human beings will always find a reason to disagree with each other. Unlike the animals know where they stand. The lion knows, say, look, when I'm hungry, he's going to go yam up one. He's going to find whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they know when the lion comes, they better scatter and you'll get the weakest one. The hyena knows, well, I'm going to wait till the lion finishes food because, and when if there's a couple of bits of bones left, I know I can get in there. You know, there's an order. With us human beings given the gift of language and to be able to talk and communicate with each other, sadly, as simple as that is, it's a very complicated situation to be in because we're not all going to agree.
Yeah.
We're not all going to agree and we just can't please each other all the time, not even some of the time, you know, hence why we have what we have today and will always have, sadly, in my books.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And it's such a valid point and I suppose in that point is it comes down to the individual, what we're going to do in our lives.
And I tell you what, and I just wrap up on what I was saying there. For me, where does that leave me? You know where that leaves me? Powerless. Powerless over people, places, and things. I learned this many, many years ago. And sometimes I forget, and I got to remind myself. And when I say I'm powerless, it doesn't mean I don't vote. I still vote. Of course I vote. Do you know what I mean? Because I have my say. But I'm powerless over the outcome. Do you know what I mean? Action speaks louder than words.
Yeah.
Okay? If you don't take action, nothing happens, of course. But I'm powerless over the outcome of the action that I've taken. There's a difference. If I embrace that powerlessness, that means I'm free to live my life. I'm free to do what's right for myself and the greater good and let go with the outcome and not feel resentful if it doesn't go my way.
Yeah.
Like they say, you know what I mean? Expectations are the seeds for resentment.
Yeah.
So I try my best not to have too much expectations on the world, whether you're a politician or whether you're my next door neighbor. I try not to have too much expectations put any expectations on anyone to fulfill what I would like things to be or how I would like things to be. That makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. I mean, I live exactly the same way. Exactly the same way, and I know, and it's just so valuable to hear that, because sometimes maybe I do forget that maybe there isn't a solution, but I feel like just from the experience I've had in my life, from your experience, that I have a responsibility to try to make this a better place.
Of course.
Than I found it, maybe.
Absolutely. And I think you are, mate. You've already done that. I think we are. We all are. We all are making this world a better place in our own ways.
Yeah.
Everyone has their way of doing that. And that's absolutely fine. Because, my way might be different to your way, or your way might be different to my way, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
I say fantastic, and I say great. Do what you believe is right for you or that person on their journey, because I think ultimately what is to be is going to be anyway. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, if I think of my son again, he's a young actor himself, and what I've taught him and what I've passed on to him is the power of letting go. So when he does an audition for, he's got, Dad, when he first got into acting, we're like, Dad, when are we going to hear about, have you heard anything from my agent? But I said, no, son, remember, look, tell you, when you do an audition, son, that part is yours for that time. That time, when you go in walk in that room, you've got 15, 20 minutes to do your thing, you own that part.
Yeah.
When you walk out the door, son, you let go. You let go, because now you're powerless over the outcome of what you did. If it goes your way, fantastic. If it doesn't go your way, fantastic. And what happened is, we did an audition yesterday, and now, because he's bang on it, he's well up to speed, he did the audition. How'd it go? Yeah, good, Dad. Right, let's go for some food. I said, what do you fancy? He said, let's go to the Real Greeks. Let's go there. He completely forgot about it. Dropped it.
Done it.
Within a second.
Yeah.
That was it. Because he understands the power of letting go. And then when he has got jobs out of the blue, he said, I got it. That's, it's a surprise. Because he's not dwelling on it. He's not expecting it. He's not waiting for it. He's not hoping for it. He's not holding onto it and squeezing it. Do you know what I mean?
It's kind of like, what a gift of freedom that you've managed to give to your son, this tool of letting go.
And in that, with this conversation as well, what we talked about with kids and the greater things, the stuff that's going on in the world, I apply it to everything, or try to. Of course, I'm a human being. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I'm like, I get resentful, and then I go, oh yes, you know what? Just let go, Stan. Let go, man. Let go. I remember. Just let it be. Let it
Stanley.
be.
Brother, man, this has been just amazing.
I don't know how long we've been yapping away for, mate.
I didn't really track the time, but I think the cameras are gone. Did the cameras run out, or? Oh, they're okay.
Still here. That's good.
Yeah, so we've talked past the camera time, but
we have indeed. You know what I mean? And it's lovely to really, these kind of conversations for me are healing. And doing fantastic things in the world. And I'm also aware there's so many other people doing podcasts, and do you know what I mean? There's talks going on, and we're all having a conversation. And this is what we go back to, in closing, and to summarize, is it's that journey of connecting as human beings. It's this technology that's bringing us all together, that we can talk our truth, and we can go, that's exactly what I was thinking. Oh my God. Boom, 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 boom. Just having a conversation alone heals the world, because someone in some other part of the world is going to listen to this and go, and they speak a different language or whatever, and then we go, that's exactly what we were thinking and feeling over here. you know, and
so valuable, yeah.
Valuable
so
to just
valuable.
talk, man,
Yeah.
just talking alone.
And being, just reaching that level of honesty with yourself and that integrity where then you allow yourself to speak your truth. And, you know, we've had to get lost to find ourselves to do that.
Yeah,
And as you really encapsulated it, really, this whole thing is getting lost, and maybe we're coming into an era of finding ourselves, and that feels right. You know, that feels like there's something tangible in that. You know, there's something real in that.
And you know what? It reminds me of the Nelson Mandela inaugural speech that was written by a lovely woman called Anne-Marie Wilson or something like that. And it's called Our Deepest Fear. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And how powerful.
Yeah.
And it goes on to talk about giving each other permission to shine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Giving each other permission. So if I speak my truth, I give you permission to speak yours. That it's okay to say, hey, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too. I suffer from depression, and sometimes I get lonely, and sometimes I think the world's a crappy place, and I don't, you know. Me too. I think that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, brother, you are shining.
And you are shining.
You're shining,
too,
my man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stanley, where can people connect with you? And
So, you know what? I've got my Little Big Man.
The book,
which is out there. I'm as I mentioned, singer-songwriter. So I have an album on Spotify called Simply Stanley. So it's an acoustic guitar, write all my own songs, and it's very much, my songs are about what we've talked about with life and the planet and, you know, love and whatnot. I'm an actor, so you're going to see me on your screens doing all kinds of bits and bobs. That whole social media thing, you know, I don't really plug too much into it. Every now and then I kind of have a look.
Yeah.
I'm on Facebook, you know what I mean? I'm on the, what's the other one? I don't really do the Twitter stuff.
Instagram.
Yeah. But, you know, Facebook is the best place. If you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on Facebook. That's where I kind of, most of the time,
we'll put this, when this goes out, we'll put out some... some little promos on Facebook and Instagram.
You know,
and people just follow Stanley. I mean, Stanley's just such a rich personality, just brings so much to this life, and, you know, it's just a real pleasure, man.
Thank you, Steve, and
likewise. Have you on this podcast.
Absolutely, and look, and thank you as well for inviting me. You know what I mean? I really, again, I see you. You know what I mean?
I see you,
brother. I see you. You know, when this word intimacy, intimacy, I see you, brother. And thank you for this time.
Stanley, lots of love, brother.
Nice one.
Take care, my man.
Yeah, cheers.
Nice one.